All right. I'd like to start off by saying Barakatah Yahweh, Ba'Hashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'Hashem, Rakha Kodash. Welcome
Let's start off by saying Barakatah
to another
Yahweh.
live lesson. The name of this one is How Jake Became Hellenized. Not sure how long ago, maybe about a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks ago, Elder Apostle Tahar did a video where he mentioned Antioch's Epiphanies and that whole Hellenization that took place among Jake, because we're more concerned about what happened to Israel, and when we deal with certain historical characters, they usually have some association with the Bible, and that's why we go into that. I mean, we touch on others, that may not be connected to the Bible, but mostly historical persons and events, accounts that correlate with what the scriptures are saying. So, seeing that he said, he may do it or somebody could do it, I've been wanting to do this lesson. We've done lessons on this in the past, and hopefully this will be edifying, because one thing that these people in the church do not understand is the whole concept of the Gentiles in the New Testament. They think that the Gentiles mean everyone, because the word Gentile, which translates to nations, could also mean other nations. But when we read the scriptures in the New Testament, which is a reflection and a fulfillment of the Old Testament, and knowing both those things, we understand that the New Testament as well as the Old Testament was only written for the nation of Israel. So, I got a couple of articles I want to get into, a couple of precepts, and Lord's will, this will be an edifying lesson, because this is very important to understand, because the history of the colonization of the Greeks, the scriptures go into it, but not in full detail. You have the Apocrypha that goes into it more. And that's one of the reasons why they took it out, because it connects the Greeks and Gentiles and Grecians of the New Testament with the Israelites that were conquered by the Greeks and forced to keep their laws, their ways, their language. So we want to touch on some of those things, Lord's will. So, without further ado, just bear me 1 second. Let's get into it. First thing we want to go into is Antioch's Epiphanies. So Antioch is the fourth Epiphanies. He came from the Seleucid line. When you go to Daniel 7, you go to Daniel 8, you go to First Maccabees, the first chapter. The head of the Greek Empire that united all Greece together, that was the first king over Greece, was Alexander the Creep. Matter of fact, let's get that real quick. We call him Alexander the Creep. Oops, this is not it. This is something else that I wanted to hold on to. But let's go over here right quick. First Maccabees 1:1, and it happened after that Alexander, son of Philip the Macedonian, who they call Alexander the Great, the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Kittim, had smitten Darius, king of the Persians and Medes. He reigned in his stead, the first over Greece. So this, what you're seeing later on in history, was started by Alexander the Great, or Alexander the Creep, or Alexander the Greek. And upon his death, his son didn't rule in his stead. His other generals ruled. He parted his kingdom among his generals. And there were other generals, but there were four main characters. you had Cassander, Lysimachus, Ptolemy, and Seleucus. And from the two main rivalries, I mean, they had other rivalries, but the main two that warred against each other was the Seleucid Empire and the Ptolemaic Empire. You know, and through the line of the Seleucid Empire, which was one of Alexander the Greek's generals, is where you get this individual named by the name of Antiochus IV Epiphanes. Okay, now that we gave you a little brief history on that, you can do your own research to get more information, but we're going to read a couple of points on this. Antiochus IV Epiphanes, God manifest because he fancied himself to be the Most High, was a Hellenistic king of the Seleucid Empire, because remember, it was split up into four. And the Seleucids, they had control over Colli, Syria, and that region around there. And they were trying to advance to take over the rest of the empire. But the Lord didn't want that to happen. They'll fight through certain regions and take over certain regions back and forth. But ultimately, they couldn't conquer the Greek Empire like Alexander the Great did, because prophecy stated that it would be parted into four heads. So the Lord would not allow the empire to be united like it was because of prophecy. It says Hellenistic was a Hellenistic king of the Seleucid Empire from 175 BC until his death in 164 BC. He was the son of King Antiochus III the Great. His original name was Mithridates, or alternative for Mithridates. He assumed the name Antiochus after he ascended the throne. Notable events during the reign of Antiochus IV include his near conquest of Egypt, his persecution of the Jews of Judea and Samaria, and the rebellion of the Jewish Maccabees. Antiochus is notable as the first successful usurper in the history of the Seleucid realm. After his own death, power struggles between competing lines of the ruling dynasty heavily contributed to the collapse of the empire. And the reason why the empire collapsed ultimately was because of prophecy. The Romans had to come and take, over, which is the fourth beast. Antiochus' often eccentric behavior and capricious actions during the interaction with common people, such as appearing in the public bathhouse and applying municipal offices, led some of his contemporaries to call him Epimanes, the Mad One, a wordplay on his title Epiphanies. So what I want to do is we're going to jump down to the book of Maccabees, right? Going to jump down to this portion here. Because, you're going to have sympathizers, that are going to try to paint this guy to be, somewhat of a hero. But then the truth is in the scriptures. So we're going to read some of this here. It says, persecution of the Jews. The Seleucid, like the Ptolemies before them, held a mild suzerainty over Judea, which was, like a certain type of rule or relationship. They were in control to this tributary state, but they allowed Israel to still operate under their laws, just like the Romans did. All right, over Judea, they respected Jewish culture and protected Jewish institutions. This policy was drastically reversed by Antiochus IV, which is true, resulting in harsh persecutions and a revolt against his rule, the Maccabean Revolt. Scholars of Second Temple Judaism, therefore, sometimes refer to Antiochus' reign as the Antiochian crisis for the Jews. Book of Maccabees. According to the authors of the Book of Maccabees, while Antiochus was busy in Egypt, a rumor spread that he had been killed in Judea. The deposed high priest Jason gathered a force of 1,000 soldiers and made a surprise attack on the city of Jerusalem. Menelaus, the high priest appointed by Antiochus, was forced to flee Jerusalem. During a riot, King Antiochus returned from Egypt in 168 BC. Enraged by his defeat, he attacked Jerusalem and restored Menelaus, and then executed many Jews, many Israelites. And there was civil war between Jake and the high priesthood. They killed the real, true high priest, which is Onias III. And it was being fought between these two Hellenized Jakes, Jason and Menelaus for the high priesthood. They were bidding for that, for that position. It says, when this is 2 Maccabees 5:11-14. When these happenings were reported to the king, he thought that Judea was in revolt. Raging like a wild animal, he set out from Egypt and took Jerusalem by storm. He ordered his soldiers to cut down without mercy those whom they met, to slay those who took refuge in their houses. There was a massacre of young and old, a killing of women and children, a slaughter of virgins and infants. In the space of 3 days, 80,000 were lost. 3 days. 40,000 meeting a violent death, and the same number being sold into slavery. And this is the reason for the Maccabean Revolt. The Maccabean Revolt was not centered against, the civil unrest that was happening in Israel between the high priesthood. It was because of what Antioch did and how he imposed his will upon Israel. And you had wicked Israelites that went with it, and you had other Israelites that weren't with that. And a lot of them got put to death. It says Antiochus decided to side with the Hellenized Jews in order to consolidate his empire and to strengthen his hold over the region. So we're going to read that, in a little bit. He outlawed Jewish religious rites and traditions kept by observant Jews and ordered the worship of Zeus as a supreme god, 2 Maccabees 6:1-12. This was anathema. It means accursed. To the Jews, and they refused me to enforce his decree. The city of Jerusalem was destroyed because of the resistance. Many were slaughtered, and Antiochus established a military Greek citadel called the Acra. The date Antiochus' persecution of the Jews in Jerusalem is variously given as 168 and 167 BC. In their commentary in the book of Daniel, Newsom and Breed argue for 167, blah, blah, blah. Traditionally, as expressed, the first and second books of the Maccabees, the Maccabean Revolt was painted as a national resistance to a foreign political and cultural oppression. And that's true. Traditionally, as expressed in the first and second books of the Maccabees, the Maccabean Revolt was painted as a national resistance to foreign political and cultural oppression. And that's exactly what was happening. What do you call, ripping women apart that were pregnant and killing them and their children for circumcising their children, not allowing the Sabbath to be kept, not allowing certain high holy days to be kept, not allowing, to call yourself an Israelite, a Jew, a Yahweh. That's all oppression. Forcing your laws, statutes, and commandments on the people, making them eat pork, which is against our laws. That's a straight up oppression, and that's exactly what happened. But here comes the devil with his spin. In modern times, and notice everything that Esau does that changes the narrative, so to speak, is always modern times. Let's get a quick precept real quick. These goddamn devils, man. Let's go to Isaiah chapter 29 and verse 15. Woe unto them that seek deep to hide their counsel from the Lord, and their works are in the dark, and they say, who seeth us and who knoweth us? Surely your turning of things upside down shall be esteemed as a potter's clay, because whatever you did is being made manifest now. Like when a potter makes a pot, what does he do? He makes it, and usually he's by himself when he's making it. And after he makes it, he polishes it up and sets it on display, and people see the work that he did. So these devils, their works are being made manifest. As it says in Obadiah, how are the things of Esau searched out? It says, for shall the work say of him that made it, he made me not? Or shall the thing framed say of him that framed it, he had no understanding? Because the Most High created your wicked ass. So how in the hell are you going to try to hide from the Lord the things that you're doing and the turning upside down that you're doing when the Lord made you? You didn't make yourself. Got some goddamn nerve, man. So it says, in modern times, however, scholars have argued that the king was instead intervening in a civil war between the traditionalist Jews in the country and the Hellenized Jews in Jerusalem, according to Joseph P. Schultz, an Amalekite, 1948er. Modern scholarship, on the other hand, considers the Maccabean Revolt less an uprising against foreign oppression than as a civil war between the Orthodox and Reformist parties in the Jewish camp. Now, let's see if this is true. Because they're saying that the reason why the Maccabees revolted was because there was a civil war going on between their brothers, and they were fighting against each other for the priesthood, killing each other, setting each other up, and this is the reason for the Maccabean Revolt. Well, let's see if that's true. When we go to the book of Second Maccabees, First Maccabees chapter 2, verse 39. Now when Mattathias, which is the father of the 5 brothers of the Maccabees, one of them being Judas Maccabees, which really he was the one that was called Maccabees. Now when Mattathias and his friends understood hereof, because when you read up above that, when the Greeks came to destroy Jake, they came on the Sabbath day because they knew our traditions. And they knew that Jake would not fight on the Sabbath because it was supposed to be a holy day. So they came, they slaughtered the men, women, and children who didn't resist them. And really, truth be told, Esau is the real coward. He's the only one that would go out there and slaughter men and women, like that. I mean, there's been instances where that happened, where the Lord gave the order. But they'll be the only ones that will, at least in that case, they would try to resist. He's the only one that would slaughter men and women and children that are defenseless, and even men that are not even fighting back. You see, that's why he drops bombs on people from planes. He sits in a bunker somewhere, pressing buttons, shooting missiles at people, gunning them down from far away, using drones, because they're the real cowards, man. Marinate on that. Yep, that's right. Esau is a damn bully. So it says, and at that, now when Mattathias and his friends understood thereof, they mourned for them right sore. And one of them said to another, if we all do as our brethren have done, and fight now for our lives and laws against the heathen. It wasn't, the revolt didn't happen on account of a civil war. It was against Antiochus Epiphanes and his forces and other wicked Israelites. And one of them said to another, if we all do as our brethren have done and fight now for our lives and laws against the heathen, they will now quickly root us out of the earth. And that's true. At that time, therefore, they decreed, saying, whosoever shall come to make battle with us on the Sabbath day, we will fight against him, neither will we die all as our brethren that were murdered in the secret places. So pretty much, that's the reason why the revolt happened. And we're going to get to the first chapter, of some of the things that were being done, by this devil. So now let's go back here. Let's see what else we got. I mean, we got enough of that madness. All right, now, next step is what? Called Hellenization. Now, what is Hellenization? Hellenization is the imposition or the putting the burden on someone to follow your laws, statutes, commandments, your language, and just your whole being, your dress code, everything. That's what that's in a nutshell. That's what Hellenization is. So we're going to read a little bit of that here, Hellenization, and I put these two in the description box for anyone that would like to read a little more on it. Hellenization is the historical spread of ancient Greek culture, religion, and to a lesser extent language over foreign peoples conquered by Greeks or brought into their sphere of influence, particularly during the Hellenistic period following the campaign of Alexander the Great in the 4th century BC. The result of Hellenization was the element of Greek origin combining various forms and degrees with the local elements. And these Greek influences spread from the Mediterranean basin as far east as modern-day Pakistan. In modern times, Hellenization has been associated with the adoption of modern Greek culture and the ethnic and cultural homogenization of Greece. So they imposed their will on the people. And now we're going to read about that. So let's jump down to the 10th verse. You could read, from the top. First Maccabees chapter 1 verse 10. And there came out of them a wicked root, Antiochus surnamed Epiphanes, son of Antiochus the king, which we read about that in Wikipedia, who had been in hostage at Rome. And that's another thing. He was a hostage at Rome. And there was someone else, I believe his name was Demetrius, that was traded for him. And that's when he came and was able to had a joint rulership with his brother Seleucus. I believe that was Seleucus the fourth, if I'm not mistaken, who had been in hostage at Rome, and he reigned the 137th year of the kingdom of the Greeks. In those days went there out of Israel wicked men, who persuaded many, saying, Let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us, for since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow. So this device pleased them well. So you had wicked Israelites back then and today also. That's why you have your William O'Neill's and other infiltrators, that infiltrate certain organizations, including the Hebrew Israelites, that are siding with the enemy. In today's term, you had Hellenization, you have Romanization, and today you have what? Americanization. It's all the same thing, done over. Inside joke. Nevertheless true. It says, Then certain of the people were so forward hearing that they went to the king, who gave them license to do after the ordinances of the heathen. Whereupon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem according to the customs of the heathen, and made themselves uncircumcised, which they actually did that. They actually sewed their penis, the turtleneck back on the penis. And there's a term for it. It's epi something. I always forget that term. One of the brothers from the New York camp, he sends me the information from time to time, but I always forget epi something. But that's just a technical term for it. It says they made themselves uncircumcised, and also this also applies to becoming uncircumcised in their heart. And this is what happened to the Israelites. This is why they were being called uncircumcised. This is why they were being called heathens. This is why they were being called Gentiles by the Jews, the Jews, or the circumcision in Jerusalem. Because you got to remember, here it is 2,000 years later, and we're learning about this history through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shem Shai, tying it to the Gentiles of the New Testament, which are Israelite foreigners. And this information is thousands of years old. But you have to remember, back then, this was something new, or fresh, should I say. And they knew that history. They knew the history of what was going on. And you might be like, well, no, they were in Jerusalem. They didn't know nothing about that. Well, you had Gamaliel, who was speaking about certain revolts that happened. You had Yahushua speaking about certain events that took place. You had, Claudius Caesar, which kicked the Israelites out of, Jerusalem. So you had outside influences, on certain, in certain cases that did certain things to fulfill prophecy. So this is what we're learning now was fresh in their mind back then. See, we're just being re-educated, by it, because we knew it back then. It says, then certain of the people were so forward hearing that they went to the king, who gave them and made themselves uncircumcised, and forsook the holy covenant, and joined themselves to the heathen, and were sold to do mischief. This is what you call a bunch of sellouts. This is your sellouts here. Now, when the kingdom was established before Antiochus, he thought to reign over Egypt, that he might have the dominion over two realms. So now let's skip down. Because what happened, he was in a war. I believe the war was in Egypt. And he had lost that war. And he was frustrated and mad. And he heard that there was a revolt in Israel. And he came, he saw, and he conquered. Like Julius Caesar. Veni Vidi Vici. Which some say Vini Vidi Vici. I came, I saw, I conquered. Let's see. Okay, no, he had actually won that war in Egypt. My bad. I stand corrected. And after that, Antiochus had smitten Egypt, he returned again in the 143rd year and went up against Israel and Jerusalem with a great multitude, and entered proudly into the sanctuary and took away the golden altar and the candlestick of light and the vessels thereof. This is the reason for the Maccabean Revolt. Not because there was civil war. How the hell they're going to have civil war, right? And the revolt is because of the civil war, but they're attacking the heathen. Civil war implies your own people. The citizens of either your town, state, or whatever the case is. That region. So how the hell is going to be a revolt because of the civil war, but they're fighting the heathen? Show you how these devils do, man. And the table of the shewbread, and the pouring vessels, and the vials, and the censers of gold, and the veils, and the crown, and the golden ornaments that were before the temple, all which he pulled off. And this was prophesied when you read Daniel, the 8th chapter, that he was going to do this. All right. He took also the silver and gold and the precious vessels. Also, he took the hidden treasures which he found. And when he had taken all away, he went into his own land, having made a great massacre and spoken very proudly. See, and the Lord didn't get him this time. He got him later on. Therefore, there was a great mourning in Israel in every place where they were. So this brought the morale of Jake down. See, like right now, Jake, they still proud. They still doing they thing. They still talking their shit. But when the persecution, Jacob's trouble comes in, that's when they're gonna want to humble down. They're gonna want to learn. They want to know the names of the Most High, Yahweh Shai. They're going to want to know what can they do to get this oppression off of them. And through the Spirit, we've been telling them that knowledge and wisdom shall be the stability of that time, the strength of salvation. It says, so that the princes and elders mourned, the virgins and young men were made feeble, and the beauty of women was changed. Right? And you can read on. It goes into, more detail of what took place. For it was a place to lie in wait against the sanctuary and an evil adversary to Israel. Thus they shed innocent blood on every side of the sanctuary and defiled it. See? Let's jump down. And some of them fled away. Let's jump down to the 40th verse. And as had been her glory, so was her dishonor increased, and her excellency was turned into mourning. Moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom. So remember, if this is in writing, this is what? A law that's being established. Just like Esau is pushing his laws today. Your different legislations, your Operation Warp Speed and all this stuff. All that legislation is leading what? To straight up oppression or draconian measures. Out there in the land of Israel right now, they got, if you don't get the max, then you can't get the green light to return back to normal. These devils are very clever. So you got to understand that the Most High, Yahweh, is working on the left-hand side with these devils. So they're very calculating in what they do because the Lord is giving them the blueprint on what to do. It's a stranglehold. Get the people in a position of desperation to want to get back to normalcy, and they will comply for the most part. And the rest, you gotta get physical with them. See? And that'll bring in the fulfillment, after the majority of people are deceived to take this mark of the beast, which is a microchip. Then, the physical persecution of the resistors will take place. And this is where the scriptures say there shall be an insurrection upon those that fear the Lord. The time of Jacob's trouble. And everyone should leave his law. See, so he wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people. This was a new world order back around 168 BC or so. It happened many other times. They tried it during the Tower of Babel. Every empire that ruled tried to bring all realms under their dominion. And for the most part, they had the known world in certain cases, under their grip. But they didn't have the whole world. So today is no different. The NWO, New World Order, ain't nothing different. One world government. That's what they're pushing. And everyone should leave his laws. So all the heathen agreed according to the commandment of the king. So you had heathens that agreed to this. Just like you have these other nations today that are drinking that Babylonian juice, sipping out of that cup. Or the fornication of that whore, which is America, not the Vatican Church. Yea, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion, because you had wicked Israelites, and sacrificed unto idols and profaned the Sabbath. Why? Because they didn't want to be persecuted like they witnessed their brothers being persecuted. So they decided to sell out so that they wouldn't receive those punishments. And you're going to have a lot of Israelites that's going to do that in this time. It says, for the king has sent letters by messengers. So remember, these letters are laws. To leave your laws, your beliefs, and conform to the Greek laws, the Hellenization. For the king had sent letters by messengers unto Jerusalem and the cities of Judah, that they, or Yehoiada, that they should follow the strange laws of the land. And this is where the great Hellenization came upon Jake. This is why the Jews, or the Yehoiada of the Yayim of Israel at the time, they called, or the circumcision, they called these Israelites, they call them uncircumcised. Then you had another term called Grecians. And the Grecians were Jews or Israelites that knew that they were Israelites, followed the law, statutes, commandments, but they spoke the Greek language. And they were a product of this Hellenization that took place back then. But they came back. So they were not considered uncircumcised. They were considered Grecians. They weren't given the same rights as other Israelites born in the land. That's how Jake is. But nevertheless, they knew that they were Israelites. They were coming to Jerusalem to keep the feast of the Passover and the other feasts, following the customs, keeping the Sabbath, so on and so forth. But the only thing is that they were speaking Greek. They weren't speaking Hebrew. So you read on, it keeps on going, and it gives you all of the things that this devil did and the great persecutions that came upon Israel. Some of them complied, most of them complied, but a lot of them withheld. And that prompted the Maccabean Revolt to fight for themselves, their brothers, their wives, their children, and for the law, statutes, and commandments of Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai. That's where the Maccabean Revolt came in. So now what we're going to do is going to go into the New Testament in the book of Acts 6 and 1, and we're going to read a couple of points here to show you the difference between the Grecians, which are Greek-speaking Jews that kept the customs of Israel, and the Gentiles, which were the Israelite foreigners. All right, so it's Acts 6 and 1. It says, and in those days, when the number of the disciples was multiplied, there arose a murmuring of the Grecians. Now, when you read Grecians, most people think of so-called white people mixed in with Jake. No, these were Israelites also. and they were being called Grecians for a reason. We're going to get to it. So there was a murmuring of the widows. I'm sorry. There also arose a murmuring of the Grecians against the Hebrews because their widows were neglected in the daily ministration. So there was a big whoop-de-doo about it. So when we look up this term Grecians, what we find is Hellenistas, right? A Hellenist, one who imitates the manner and customs or the worship of the Greeks and use the Greek tongue, used in the New Testament of Jews born in foreign lands and speaking Greek. And this is exactly what took place. Marinate on that for a little bit. So let's read that again. The Hellenistas, right, used in the New Testament of Jews born in foreign lands and speaking Greek. This was not, excuse me. This is not dealing with the other Israelites that didn't speak. I'm sorry, that didn't that spoke the Greek language also and kept they spoke, these Israelites, these Grecians. They kept the law, statutes, and commandments, but they spoke the Greek language. That's the only influence of the Greek they had on them. Okay, and that's why they were called Grecians. But the Greeks or the Gentiles that we read about in the New Testament, those were Israelites that totally lost their way. They were speaking the Greek or whatever other language. They weren't keeping any customs of, they were just doing whatever the heathen were doing. So now let's go back. But before, there was a precept that came to mind. Hopefully it'll come back, Lord's will. Let's go here to the book of, matter of fact, all right, you know what? Let's go here real quick. Romans 2:9. Right? No. Let me save this one because this goes into the next phase. So what we're going to do is we're going to go here to John. St. John 19:17. This is during the crucifixion of Yahushua, and you had many Israelites present here, right? And he, bearing his cross, dealing with Yahushua, went forth into a place called in the place of a skull, which is called in the Hebrew Golgotha. And you can watch Elder Apostle Gabar's video that he did on this. He explained why it was called the place of the skull, where they crucified him and two others with him on either side, and Yahushua in the midst. And Pilate wrote a title and put it on the cross, and the writing was Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews, or Yahushua of Nazareth, King of the Jews. And you have pendants, for necklaces and different and on crosses, and you'll see the word Inri. Inri is the Latinized way of saying this phrase here, and it's Inri, not Jer, not with a J. Inri is Jesus, Nazareth, Rex, you days, I forget how to say it in the Greek, but in other words, Yahushua of Nazareth, King of the Jews, or King of Yehudah, or Yehudah. All right? But this is the point. This title then read many of the Jews. So who's reading the title? Many of these Israelites. Many Israelites. Many of the circumcision, right? Yehudah. For the place where Yahushua was crucified was nigh to the city, and it was written in Hebrew and Greek and Latin. So you had many Israelites there that were reading this, but these were Israelites that were keeping the customs. All right? So they spoke Hebrew, they spoke Greek, they spoke Latin, and this is why it was written in 3 languages for them to read it. Let's go to Acts chapter 2, verse 5. And there were dwelling at Jerusalem, or Yerushalayim, Jews, or Yehudah, devout men out of every nation under heaven, because you had Israelites that were coming from different places where they were living and speaking the languages of these nations, but they were still keeping the customs of Israel because they are Israelites. The only difference was they weren't speaking the Hebrew tongue, as we read in the book of St. John 19. It says, now when this was noised abroad, the multitude came together and were confounded, because that every man heard them speak in his own language. Dealing with the disciples, when the Holy Spirit came upon them, one of the first miracles they did was speaking in different tongues. And there were many Israelites there present, because this was during the time of the first fruits, the Pentecost, which was a commandment to come to Jerusalem 3 times in a year. So these people present are Israelites that were following the law, statutes, and commandments of the Lord. And when they heard the disciples speaking in these different languages, they were amazed. And they were looking at each other like, what the hell is going on here? But it was a miracle. And they were all amazed and marveled, saying one to another, behold, are not all these which speak Galileans? So they should be speaking the Hebrew tongue, in other words. They shouldn't be speaking our language. And how hear we every man in our own tongue wherein we were born? So these were what? Jews, Yahweh, Israelites, devout men. They were devoted out of every nation under heaven. All right. Now it goes on to give you the different places where they were scattered. Parthians and Medes and Elamites. These weren't actual Parthians and actual Medes and actual Elamites. These were Israelites that had citizenship among these nations and spoke these nations' language. Parthians and Medes and Elamites and the dwellers in Mesopotamia and in Judea and Cappadocia and Pontus and Asia, Phrygia and Pamphylia in Egypt and in parts of Libya about Cyrene, which just goes down to so-called the northern parts of Africa, Libya and about Cyrene, which you had Simon the Cyrenian, which helped Yahweh carry the cross. You know, he was an Israelite. And strangers of Rome, because they were Israelites that were strange to Rome. They weren't actual Romans. They had the Roman citizenship, but they were strangers in Rome. Jews, Yahweh, and proselytes. Proselytes being those that converted, because remember, these are the disciples speaking, which are the apostles now. So these proselytes were Israelites that were following the Pharisees and Sadducees and them and that way until they heard the message of the Lord, Yahweh, and they converted to following the Lord and his men and the doctrine of Yahweh and the doctrine of the apostles. Cretes and Arabians, wait a minute. Cretes and Arabians, these were all Israelites. Remember, Jews, Yahweh, devout men out of every nation under heaven. Cretes and Arabians, we do hear them speak in our tongues the wonderful works of the Most High. So now, let's go back to Acts 6, and let's jump down, because you could read the history on what happened, between how they set up the tables, to take care of the situation. And now we're going to jump down to the 8th verse. And Stephen, full of faith and power, did great wonders and miracles among the people. It says, then arose certain of the synagogue, which is called the synagogue of the Libertines, which were Israelites that were made slaves by Pompey. And they were released of that. I forget the name of the emperor. We're going to get it in a minute. But that's how they became liberty. That's why they set up a synagogue called the Synagogue of the Libertines. And I believe they were saying that there was remnants of it in Pompeii, and the word libertine goes back to the word liberty or free. So these were Israelites that were given freedom, that were living in Egypt, in those areas down there. So it says, and there arose certain of the synagogue, which is called the Synagogue of the Libertines and Cyrenians, this was in North Africa, so-called North Africa, and Alexandria, and of them of Cilicia and of Asia, disputing with Stephen. So these were Grecians, Israelites, Hellenistic Jews or Hellenistic Yahweh, arguing with Stephen about what he was teaching, the message he was teaching about Yahweh Shai. So when we look up the word libertines, right? Let's look that up real quick. You have libertinos, one who has been liberated from slavery, a freedman, or the son of a freedman. Libertine denotes Jews, Yahweh, according to Philo, who had been made captives of the Romans under Pompey, but were afterwards set free, and who, although I thought they had gave the name of the emperor, but I guess not. It says, and who, although they had fixed their abode in Rome, so I'm sorry, these were actually living in Rome, but they went back to that time, down in that region. Had built at their own expense a synagogue at Jerusalem, which they frequented in that city. So this is where Stephen was at the time when they were disputing with him. The name Libertines adhered to them to distinguish them from freeborn Jews, or Yahweh, because they were slaves once and then they became free. That's why them wicked Pharisees told Yahweh, we were never the children of slaves, because they were born free. But you had Israelites that were born in captivity. All right. Yeah, them wicked Pharisees and them told that to Yahweh, we were never in bondage. We be Abraham's seed. We were never in bondage. That's where there was a distinction. Who had subsequently taken up their residence at Rome. So they were living in Rome. All right. Evidence seems to have been discovered of the existence of a synagogue of the Libertines at Pompeii. See, so they had a synagogue there, and they, I believe it said they had one in Jerusalem, a synagogue at Jerusalem or Jerusalem, and I forgot who the actual emperor was that set them free. But that's neither here nor there. Oh, Vespasian. Okay, might have been Vespasian. No. It couldn't have been Vespasian, because this goes way back. This goes back to the BC era. Because Pompeii, that was like around 65 BC, around that time period. So that was back in the BC era. So it had to be one of those emperors later on after that. Maybe Julius, maybe Augustus. I'm not sure exactly who. But like I said, that's neither here nor there. All right, so now we got the Cyrenians. Kurenaios, a native of Cyrene. You'll find that, on the ancient map, you'll find it around the northern parts of Africa. Alexandrians, which are Alexandrios, which is Alexandria, Egypt, a native or resident of Alexandria in Egypt. So all of these places where Israelites had citizenship and speaking the languages of these nations, unless they were already speaking the Greek language. All right, so now let's go from there. Now let's shift a little bit. Let's go to Romans 2:9. It says, matter of fact, before we go there, let's go to the book of 1 Corinthians 12. Now we're dealing with the actual Gentiles, which are Israelites that were in a Gentile state of mind. They weren't speaking the Hebrew. They weren't keeping any customs of Israel. And this is the purpose why Yahweh sent Peter through the Spirit by the angel to Cornelius, because that was the first introduction of this truth to the Israelite foreigners. And then the job was given to the Apostle Paul, because he was well studied in the Greek language and their customs, their sporting goods, the different sports, gladiatorial events. He had vast knowledge of their poets, their music, their food, their customs. So he was able to take the knowledge of the scriptures and use it to convince the gainsayers among these Israelites that were lost. And that's why he said this, 1 Corinthians 12:1. Now concerning spiritual gifts, brethren, I would not have you ignorant. You know that you were Gentiles. Were is past tense. You were Gentiles, or you were heathens. In other words, you were Israelites that were in a heathenistic state of mind. carried away unto these dumb idols, even as you were led. This is why the Israelites had to be what? They had to be born again. They had to put off the old man. See? Be renewed in the spirit of your mind. This is what the Apostle Paul was telling them. Why is that? Because they were, it says, let's read that again. You know that you were Gentiles, carried away unto these dumb idols, even as you were led. This is what made you have the status of a Gentile. You became uncircumcised. Okay? Now, let's go real quick to 2 Maccabees chapter 6 and verse 4. For the temple was filled with riot, this is talking about the temple in Jerusalem or Yerushalayim, and reveling by the Gentiles, who dallied with harlots and had to do with women within the circuit of the holy places. And beside that brought in things that were not lawful. The altar also was filled with profane things which the law forbiddeth. They had pork, all kind of madness on there. Neither was it lawful for a man to keep Sabbath days or ancient feasts, or to profess himself at all to be a Jew. So they couldn't even call themselves Israelites, or Jews, or Yehowadayim. They call themselves by their nationality. So if he couldn't call himself an Israelite, what did they have to call themselves? Greeks. Hence, the circumcision, which are the Israelites in Israel, calling the uncircumcision, which are the Israelites that were caught up into these customs, uncircumcised, heathens, Gentiles, Greeks. That's why it says, you know that you were Gentiles, but now you've been renewed in the spirit of your mind. You've been reconciled back. Read Ephesians, the 2nd chapter. Carried away unto these dumb idols, even as you were led. Now, sometimes you see the word Gentiles, which the word Gentiles is ethnos, which is an ethnicity, ethnos, right? Which is a multitude, whether men or beasts, associated or living together, a company, troop, swarm, a multitude of individuals of the same nature or genus. See? Because they were Israelites, but they had fell away. This is why Romans 11 chapter is so important to understand, with the grafting in of that wild olive tree, which were Israelites that were wild. Because of what? Because of the worshiping of the idols. They became unclean. They became like that degenerate plant of a strange vine. All right. So let's go from there to Romans chapter 2, verse 9. Now another word that you'll hear is heathen or uncircumcision. And another, or matter of fact, before we get that, let's go to Ephesians chapter 2. And you can read the whole chapter. We're just going to get the point. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 11. Wherefore remember, because he's calling back where they came from, the situation they were in when they were in that heathenistic state of mind, that you being in time past Gentiles in the flesh, because back then you were just bugged out. You were out there. You were doing the same thing that these heathens were doing. It says, who are called, you were being called uncircumcision. So you were being called uncircumcised, you Israelites, by that which is called the circumcision in the flesh made by hands, which are who? The Israelites that were in Israel. Remember, this history was fresher back then than it is today. Today there was a lot of digging and searching and researching to get to this point through the spirit and the power of Yahweh by Shem El-Shai. But back then it was a well-known fact of these things. And the Israelites in Israel had a disdain for those Israelites that were in a Gentile state of mind, that were just totally bugged out, wearing their togas and, wearing all kind of madness, eating all kind of abominations, speaking the Greek language, so on and so forth. It says, wherefore remember that you being in time past Gentiles in the flesh, who are called uncircumcision by that which is called the circumcision in the flesh made by hands, that at that time you were without Yahushua, being aliens from the commonwealth of Israel. You were aliens from the commonwealth of Israel because this belongs to you. But when you turned, when you changed, you lost that privilege. Now, the gospel of reconciliation is preached to you for you to repent and come back. Reconciliation to be brought back into the good graces or into the favor of Yahweh, the Israelites that had fallen away. Because ultimately all Israel fell away. So the mercy that was extended to the Israelite foreigners was doubly extended over to the Israelites that rejected the Lord eventually in time. Romans 11 chapter, very important chapter to know. So let's look up the word aliens first. You have aliens, apalotrio, real, to alienate, estranged. So they were alienated. You know that you were Gentiles, even as you were led. Alienated, experiencing or inducing feelings of isolation or estrangement. See, they were estranged from the law, statutes, and commandments. Of property transferred to the ownership of another person or group. So that goes into something else, but we're dealing with this one. Experiencing or inducing feelings of isolation or estrangement. To estrange, to be shut out from one's fellowship and intimacy. Because you were a part of this at one time. So now you're shut out. But now you're being brought back into the good graces. See? And that's what reconciliation is. The gospel or the ministry of reconciliation is bringing back those Israelite foreigners back into the good graces of the Most High, Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, by the sacrifice of Yahweh Shai. Now, commonwealth, politia, the administration of civil affairs, which goes what? Back to the scriptures. A state of commonwealth, citizenship, the rights of a citizen. So you lost the privilege when you turned. Matter of fact, let's go from there. Let's go to Romans chapter 2. Romans chapter 2, verse 25. For circumcision verily profiteth, if thou keep the law. See? So if you are circumcised, you're profited by it, but you have to keep the law. But if thou be a breaker of the law, thy circumcision is made uncircumcision. Which is what? Your citizenship is yanked. You lost the right of a citizen. Now you got to work your way back. I'll be working my way back to you. Salaka, brothers. Therefore, if the uncircumcision, the ones that lost the privilege, the ones that lost the commonwealth, the ones that lost their way, their nationality, their home, their language. Therefore, if the uncircumcision keep the righteousness of the law, they're being brought back, right? It says, shall not his uncircumcision be counted for circumcision? So now you came full circle through the gospel of reconciliation. You see? It's very easy if you understand the history. But the Lord has to be working with you, because even though brothers do lessons that are very edifying, you know, and go into the heart of this whole matter, you're still going to have those that are not going to see it, you know? So let's go back. So you lost the right of the citizenship. So you became aliens to the commonwealth of Israel and strangers from the covenants of promise. So let's go to the strangers. You have the word xenos. Xenos, where you get a term xenophobic, you know, a phobia of nations. Xeno, a foreigner, a stranger, alien from a person or thing without the knowledge of, and this is what happened to Israel. You were without the knowledge of. You were without the commonwealth of Israel. without a share in, because you got cut off. Your share got cut off. Your inheritance got cut off. It says, new, unheard of, with whom he stays or lodges a host. So you know you had a lot of Israelites that came from these foreign lands, but when they came to Israel, they didn't have the same rights as the Israelites did that were born in Israel. This is why you had that beef between the Grecians, which were Israelites, and the Hebrews, which were Israelites, because the Hebrews were not given the same respect to those other Israelites that were coming from foreign lands when it came to the ministration of the widows. Got to see it, man. If you're part of the elect. That's why, Benjamin, you go to the islands. If you were born in America, well, you're fine. So you go down there, what happens? They don't treat you like one that was born there. Even though you're the same people, you don't have the same rights. Same thing in Puerto Rico, same thing in the Dominican Republic, same thing in Cuba, same thing in all them different islands, different places you go to. You wasn't born there, you don't have the same rights that we do. We don't give a damn if you are people or not. Matter of fact, your Spanish is terrible. You don't. Matter of fact, please do me a favor. Don't speak the Pacho no more. Inside joke. Brother knows what I'm talking about, or the elder, should I say? Let's see. From the covenants, diatheke, a disposition, arrangement of any sort which one wishes to be valid, the last disposition which one makes to his earthly possessions after his death, a testament or will, which is what? The covenants of promise, which are who? For who? The nation of Israel. Jeremiah 31. Hebrews 8, verse 6 down. A compact, a covenant, a testament. The Most High's covenant with Noah, etc. So it's a covenant. But it says what? The covenants, plural, of promise, which are given to who? The Israelites. Nobody else. Having no hope and without the Most High in the world. So you were gone. But now the Lord is bringing them back. You know? All right, so let's see. Let's go back. Let's see what else we got. You know what? You brothers can read the rest of this. This explains how they were brought back in. I just want to hit a couple more points and then we can close the lesson out. Because Romans 2 and 9. Now we dealt with the word Gentile. We dealt with the word Grecian. You know, you could look up the word uncircumcision. Now we're dealing with the word. This word here, Gentile, was translated Gentile in the English, but it should be another word. Romans 2:9, tribulation and anguish upon every soul of man that doeth evil, of the Jew first, or the Yahweh the Young first, Israelite first. Why? Because they know better, and also of the Gentile. Now we read in another verse that the word Gentile was what? Ethnos. But this Gentile should have been translated as what? Greek. Because we have the word Hellen. Okay? A Greek either by nationality, whether native of the mainland or of the Greek islands or colonies, which you have instances where that happens. In the widest sense, the name embraces all nations, not Jews. Well, that's not true. It embraces the Israelites also, that made the language, customs, and learning of the Greeks their own. This is where the Hellenization came in. See, this is where you have to have an understanding to be able to discern when the blue letter Bible is on point and when it's not. Because not every time that you read a Hebrew word or a Greek word and you go to the definition, they're always on point. They go off on certain things. The primary reference is to a difference of religion and worship. So this embraces all nations, including the Israelites that made the language, because they make the language, customs, and learning of the Greeks their own. This is why they were being called what? Greeks, Gentiles. Because they couldn't call themselves Israelites. So what did they have to call themselves? Greeks. All right. So that's one. Now let's go to the one real quick, St. John, chapter 7. Start at 32. The point is in 35, and I think we'll close out on this one. John 7:32. The Pharisees heard that the people murmured such things concerning him, concerning Yahushua, and the Pharisees and chief priests sent officers to take him. Then said Yahushua to them, Yet a little while am I with you, and then I go unto him that sent me. You shall seek me and shall not find me, and where I am, thither you cannot come. Then said the Israelites, or the Yahweh among themselves, Whither will he go that we shall not find him? Will he go into the dispersed among the Gentiles and teach the Gentiles? Now this is another point where the word there for Gentiles is what? Hellen, which is Greek, which these were the Israelites that were being called Greeks. Now, when we go to these cross references, which I learned this from, not cross references, Bibles, right? Yep. I peeped Elder Yashwamba do this on one of his lessons. I said, instead of having to go here and go to each one. So you have the KJV. Let's see. NIV. The Jews said one to another, Where does this man intend to go that we cannot find him? Will he go where our people live scattered among the Greeks and teach the Greeks? So they live scattered among these heathens, the Greeks, and teach the Greeks, meaning these Israelites that are being called Greeks. Let's see. The Jews said one to another, where does this man intend to go that we will not find him? Does he intend to go to the dispersion among the Greeks and teach the Greeks? See? Yeah, you get CSB. Then the Jews said one to another, where does this man intend to go so we won't find him? He doesn't intend to go to the Jewish people dispersed among the Greeks and teach the Greeks. Does he? Even in Spanish, it uses the word griegos, which is Greek, which are the Israelites. See, so the dispersion among the Greeks are Israelites that were being called Greeks, and that's what the Apostle Paul was doing. He was teaching those Greeks that were Israelites that were scattered. All right, so I think that's a good point to stop the lesson. I pray that you brothers have been edified, the blue letter is not perfect. No, true, I thought that the blue letter wasn't, but no, it's not perfect. It's just a reference for us, it's just a reference point, for us, and knowing the doctrine helps in deciphering when they are on point and are not. So with that, I pray that you brothers have been edified. The waterfall, the precepts, I didn't get to any of them. There was a lot, So with that, I pray that you brothers have been edified. To the next time I say shalom.